Hej och välkomna till Aktiedagen med aktiespararna i Stockholm den 14 mars. Jag heter Gunnar Vrede och jag ska hålla en liten frågestund efter den här bolagspresentationen som kommer nu. Ni kan också ställa frågor, kan jag aldrig upprepa för sällan. Ställ frågorna i chatten eller på sms så ska jag vidarebefordra dem till bolagsrepresentanten. Och denne är inte mindre än Claus Elsborg Olesen, vd för Initiator Pharma. Och vad ni håller på med, det ska du få prata om själv. In English, I think. Yes. You are Danish, right?
I'm Danish and my Swedish is not so good yet.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, it's wonderful to be here in Stockholm on a sunny day like today and present the Initiator Pharma. I'm going to go through some of the recent progress we are making, some of our clinical programs, and what we are thinking about the future as well. So the normal disclaimer here in the beginning. But actually what we do in Initiator Pharma, we are dedicated to deliver returns to shareholders by delivering therapeutics for patients in need. So I'll show you today some clinical programs where there's a significant unmet need for patients worldwide. We have 3 clinical programs that I'll also go into details today. And actually so far we actually only spent about 100 million Swedish crowns to develop to the stage we are today. This is very unique for a company that have 3 clinical programs ongoing. Also, we are founded by a group of entrepreneurs that spans the whole drug development all the way from discovery, from research, all the way through the clinical trials and also into the marketing. So it's a very diverse group behind Initiator Pharma that can deliver. So Initiator Pharma is a Danish company. We are listed on First North. And most recent fundraising was in the summer of 2021, where we brought in Link and Adrigo as cornerstone investors as we took forward a new step, a new leg to our clinical development in neuropathic pain. I'll get back to that. We have about 4,000 shareholders, and we have shareholders primarily in Sweden, about 75%, and the rest is spread out between Denmark and the rest of Europe and a few in the US. So far, we have raised about 131 million Swedish crowns. We have 10 million Swedish crowns in soft funding, and then we also have a deal with MAC, which is the clinical research group that we use for our clinical trials, worth of 23 million Swedish. So we have a very advanced pipeline of drugs. And here in the first 3 boxes, I've shown you what we have in the clinic. So we have the IPIT 2015 program, which is in a phase 2B study. I'll get back to that, in the disease called erectile dysfunction for organic patients. Then we have IP 2018, which is in a phase 2A study, also in erectile dysfunction, but in the segment of psychogenic erectile dysfunction. And as I mentioned, the most recent program we added is a neuropathic pain program, which is called Trigeminal Neuralgia. And here right now we are conducting a phase 1 healthy volunteers pain challenge studies, and I'll also get back to that. In addition to the clinical programs, we also have 2 other programs that we are actually working on. And that's the IP-DP 2015 and NP 2015. And these are candidates that comes out of the same family of drugs as the ones above. But these ones we actually, in a collaboration with NIDA, that's the National Institute of Drug Abuse in the US, we are actually investigating these drugs if they could be used to treat addiction. So you could get people off some of the methamphetamine and some of the other crises that we see in the US. This is a collaboration where NIDA is paying for the results, paying for the experiments, and we are actually harvesting all the data and have all the rights to the drugs still. And also, NIDA actually has, if we see good results coming out of this, a way to fund programs into the addiction space. So a very diversified clinical pipeline with multiple attractive assets. Of course, there's a lot of text in this slide, so I will not go through it all. But as I said, we have a very diverse management. So I will just highlight 2 today. Michael Thompson, our CDO, so the Chief Clinical Development Officer, has more than 25 years experience in clinical development, both at Novartis, Novo Nordisk. He's actually an expert on taking everything from the early or late preclinical development, taken into phase 1, phase 2, generating proof of concept, exactly where we are now. He's been doing this for a number of years. Most recently, we added Christina Guldberg to the team. She comes with more than 20 years of experience also in clinical development. But actually, the last couple of years, she's been very much focused on orphan drugs. So again, this is diseases that are very rare, so it's a small segment of patients. And this is again what we're doing with the neuropathic pain program. So we brought her in to strengthen that profile of the company, as it's really important here to have a continuous dialogue with the patients. There's not many patients, and we need to make sure what we do in the clinic is making relevance and is making a meaning for the patients. We have multiple value inflection points coming up in this year from 22 and the years beyond. And here I just listed some of them. We are actually, right now, as I said, we have the IP TN21 trial. So this is the Healthy Challenge Pain study that we have ongoing that will read out in Q2. We expect to finish the IP 2018 in Psychogenic ED during this year as well. And also we expect to complete the dosing in the phase 2b study of organic erectile dysfunction. And potentially we will not have the report until next year, but we will finish the dosing in 2022. And as I said, we'll have the readout from the NIDA collaboration. And also I think that is maybe a more technical matter is that we're actually working on what we call an optimized drug product. So this is the product that we're going to put into the patients. But it is actually, you can say that already now we have the drug product that we're using, but we're using what we call a drug in a bottle. So it's not a tablet yet. What we are doing right now, we are developing a tablet, which could be the tablet that will take all the way into clinical approval at a later stage. And we do this because we want to have a tablet that is the right tablet for the indication that we are targeting. So organic ED needs a specific profile, pain needs a specific profile, and I'll get back to that later. So it's a very balanced portfolio we have here in multiple value inflection point coming up in this year and in the years to come. So a lot of things is going to happen. So one of the things I didn't mention on the pipeline is that all the drugs that we have, they modulate monoamine levels. And just to give you a bit of background, why is monoamines really important and what are monoamines? Well, in the brain, we have a system of neurons, a big network of neurons that actually are using these dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine as signal molecules. They regulate a lot of important processes, such as emotion, arousal, mood, and specific types of memory. These are all orchestrated by a specific balance of these monoamines. This is actually something we've known for many years, and it's been targeted for the therapy of many indications for a number of years, such as depression and pain. So it is a truly validated target. However, we also know that if we start modulating or we start regulating these monoamines, we are often end up in a situation where we have side effects. So if we get too much of one monoamine, then we get a negative effect of it. If we get too little of another one, we get another effect. So it's really important when you modulate this, you do it in a very gentle manner, and also you do it in a manner that is specific to the indication that you are targeting. What we do in Initiator Pharma, we are developing compounds that are second generation, so a new generation of compounds that are still targeting the monoamines, but we do it in a safe way. And with this, we can already see now in the clinical trials that we also have a really good differentiation to the compounds out there. I'll get back to the technical slide here that shows a neuron in the brain and the release of monoamines, but I'll cover that in a subsequent slide. So I said we have 3 clinical programs, but we have 2, can say, interest in the company. And the first one is erectile dysfunction. And what we are targeting here are patients that do not respond to standard of care. Standard of care, that is probably a lot of you know by names, were the PD-5 products, Viagra, Cialis. So these are the compounds that are developed in the 98, and were approved at that time. And they work for a lot of patients. But a lot of patients do not respond. Actually, 30 to 40% of the patients suffering from ED do not respond to this treatment. So this is a specific indication because you can say it's an on-demand. It's something you want to take to be able to sexually perform. Here we have the phase 2b program ongoing and also the phase 2a, and I'll show you a bit more details on that later. The second part of our pipeline is in the pain space. So then you can say again, but how does ED and pain relate together? Well, arousal and stimulation, I will get back to that, is also controlled by monoamines, and so is pain. So that's why they connect between the 2 indications. So even though you think they're very wide apart in disease pattern, they actually, the way they're regulated is very close. But In neuropathic pain, we actually get different opportunities. Here we're probably talking, instead of an on-demand, we talk about chronic treatment. We are going to go in and looking at patients that do not get relief with current treatment. We will go into an orphan indication, so very few patients. This will benefit both from premium pricing, but also to short development times in the clinic. We can get approval of a product using less patients in a clinical trial. So I'll get back to that also in the next following slide. But looking at erectile dysfunction, we know that more than 300 million men will suffer from this in 2025. We see this number increasing due to age, lifestyle. I'll go back to that in a minute. And as I said before, 30 to 40% do not respond to the standard of care treatment. So how is the erection response normally working? So this is the natural erection response. We see something nice. We hear something nice. We're being touched. All this leads into the release of dopamine. This is what we feel when we're getting aroused. This can also be the same feeling you have when you see a nice cake standing in front of you and you anticipate to start tasting this nice cake. Then you also get a massive release of dopamine. This dopamine that is released in a specific part of the brain upon stimulation called the PVN, the paraventricular nucleus, which is actually what we call the sex center in the brain. And upon an activation of this center, the signal molecules actually transmit down through the spinal cord and leads to a dilation of the blood arteries. So an opening up of blood arteries, so you have more blood running into the penile tissue and you get the erection. But what is happening on a molecular level? So here again, I'm showing you the figure that I talked about before. This is a neuron in the brain. And you see the yellow ball is being released. This is dopamine being released out upon stimulation. And it goes out and it binds to receptors. These are the receptors that activate the erection response, where we have this dilation of the arteries and we get the erection. The compound we are developing is actually targeting a mechanism where the dopamine is actually being transported back into the neuron. So you see the red cross. You see this is a transporter that kind of clears out the dopamine from the cleft. By inhibiting this transporter, what actually happens is that you increase the dopamine level in the cleft, so you have more dopamine binding to the receptors, and also the longer time it's there, so you have a longer exposure. Thereby, you're actually amplifying the natural erection response. And this is very unique. So the PD5 products that I talked about, they cannot do this. They can only prolong a natural occurring erection. We can actually initiate one. And this is why we can treat the patients that do not respond to the current treatment. We are not the only one thinking about the importance of dopamine. And actually, dopamine pathways has been validated both in animal models but also in clinical trials that this is a really important pathway for stimulating sexual function in men. However, a lot of the compounds that have been tested have a lot of negative side effects, and therefore they had to stop the trials. We have now identified a molecule where we can actually still get the beneficial effect of modulating monoamines, the dopamine, but we do not get these side effects. And this is very unique. So both 2015 and 2018 are unique compounds that they can modulate the monoamines, especially the dopamines, whereas also 2018 has a profile of serotonin that actually helps in the psychogenic origin ED patients. I will get back to that on the following slides. So I talked often about organic and psychogenic erectile dysfunction. So organic is what happens to us men when we turn 40 and older. We simply get a physical impairment of delivering sufficient blood to the penile tissue. This is often related to us being overweight or drinking too much or other lifestyle diseases like diabetes, where we simply cannot deliver sufficient blood. Then on the other side, we have the psychogenic ED patients. This can be both young and old patients. Here we're actually capable of delivering sufficient blood to the penile tissue, but we actually have other problems. We can suffer from depression, low self-esteem. We can take antidepressants for treating the depression. And this is again the imbalance of the monoamines leading to a dysfunction. So again here, two very different indications for the background, but you can say that the result is the same. They have an ED problem. But we need two drugs. That's why we have the 2018 for the psychogenic patients, where we go in and also help them with the underlying psychogenic origin of the disease. Whereas in the organic one, we just go in and boost the natural erection response with the dopamine by itself. So in the clinic, The IP 2015 program, the phase 2b study, is a 120 patient studies. We run it out of 7 sites. I'll get back to that in a minute, out in the UK. But what's really interesting in this phase 2b study, of course, we can look at safety and tolerability of the compound, but we have also included the EEIF scores. And this is the International Index for Erectile Function. So this is the same endpoint you will use in a trial where you need approval, so in a phase 3 registration trial. So this is not only, you can say, measuring erection, but it's also about what is your state of mind before the intercourse, during the intercourse, what happens during the intercourse, and afterwards. And as I indicated at the beginning, arousal is really important and is driven by dopamine. So not only will we have an effect on the physical capabilities of the erection, but we also believe it will strengthen the whole, you can say, environment around the intercourse by increasing the dopamine level. So this is a collaboration we have ongoing with MAC, which is the clinical organization we use to conduct these trials. And they actually also have invested in this trial. So they're paying the clinical cost at their site in the exchange for converting into shares. And when they made this, or we made this deal, they actually paid 70% premium to the share price. Then we have the other study, the IP 2018, which is in Psychogenic ED. So this is in a list number of patients, in 24 patients. And here we, instead of using the EEIF scores, we use what is called a Regiscan. A Regiscan apparatus is where we actually can go in and we mount an apparatus to the penis, and upon a stimulation with a visual video, erotic movie, we can measure the erection. In this study, we are running a 3-way crossover, so all patients get a placebo and 2 doses of our compound, and then we look at what is the effect. When we have the results from this trial, we will design what is the best way to advance this project into a phase 2b design. So that's why we have not said, when will we start this and how should it look? Because this is pending data. We are a data-driven company, and we want to make sure we target the right segment of patients going forward. Both trials are progressing well. Just briefly on the 2015 trial, so again, that's also a 3-arm study in the 120 patients. We are having a high dose in 40 patients, a low dose in 40 patients, and then in 40 in placebo. And this is significant power to give us a good readout when we conducted this trial. So the last couple of minutes I'm just going to spend on the neuropathic pain program. So again, as I talked about, what is the equal denominator between looking at pain and erection? And here it's the monoamines. We modulate monoamines for getting the relief that we need. So what we did when we started looking at what is the indications that we want to go for, we started looking for neuropathic pain indications where we could see there was evidence of dopamine being an important factor for pain relief. And one of the indications we identified is trigeminal neuralgia. It's an orphan disease. It strikes you down over your face. It's one of the most severe pains you can get. It's like getting electrical shock. We see it more often in women than men above the age of 50. And we can split them roughly up into 2 groups. And the way we split them up into 2 groups is the one where we can see something is pushing the nerve. So this is the patients where we can see what's wrong. Those we can go in and make a surgery on, where we can decompress the area around the nerve. We actually see about 70% of these patients still requires treatment afterwards. And then there's the other segment of patients where we do not see anything wrong. And these we can only treat pharmacologically. And there's only one approved drug, and that's carbamazepine, an old anticonvulsant, and it has a lot of side effects. And actually, the efficacy is limited of this compound. Some patients it works well, but it wears off over time. So there's an acute need for a new pharmacological treatment here. This we can also see that a lot of the patients taking these drugs are actually taking multiple other drugs to provide some kind of pain relief during the day. Again, here's a unique way to advance our product. And just to let you know again, so in this one, we are using the IP 2015 compound. So we're using the same compound for organic erectile dysfunction and for pain. So right now, we are conducting the pain challenge study. It's in healthy volunteers. We're bringing 24 healthy volunteers into the clinic, and we're going to do a 4-way crossover. So we already are ongoing with this trial. We started with the first dosing in January. So all patients, they will see 2 drug levels of IP 2015. They will see a placebo as a control, and then we have included an already approved painkiller, pregabalin, into the trial as well. And this will do to benchmark the compound as we are moving forward. This is a conventional way of looking at all pain compounds, so this is something we can benchmark with everything else that has been approved in the market today. Just saying again that upon the delivery of these results, we will go to the regulatory authorities and discuss how will a pain study look, a proof of principle in trigeminal neuralgia patients, and we'll get back to you with that when we have more on this. So in conclusion, why invest in Initiator Pharma? We have multiple value inflections upcoming. They are all financed. So we don't need to raise money for any of the things that is ongoing now. We are financed well into 23. We are maximizing the value of safe drug candidates that with broad clinical utility. And also we are targeting indications where we know dopamine are important. We have proof of concept that these compounds work for this indication. And also we are doing it in a way when the regulatory authorities, they know what are the endpoints of the trials we're going to conclude. So we're not going to invent anything new. So this is unique, and this is why Initiator Pharma is the right company to invest in. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. The origin of this company, some inventor behind it that is worth mentioning?
Yeah, so you can say that the way we actually discovered this was back then. I have a scientific background, and I worked at the University of Aarhus together with one of the other founders, Ulf Simonsen. And we were giving a compound to look for by a chemist called Dan Peters, who's actually the inventor of the compound and also a founder of the company. And we saw that this compound had very unique properties in relation to safety than other monoamine modulators. And we also knew that this compound had an effect on ED. We could see that from the animal studies. So we started looking at this and we said, okay, this is so unique, so we need to do something with it. So you can say that normally you do it all the way around, but here we actually had a drug candidate to start with. And with the data we had at hand, we said, okay, this is how we start Initiator Pharma. And then in parallel, of course, we are advancing and expanding the pipeline.
Okay. And as you mentioned, you have there's actors on this market. You mentioned a few brands there. Maybe Viagra is the most known. And you say that 30 to 40% of the patients does not respond to those drugs.
Yeah.
Are you certain that you know why they don't respond?
We are not certain, but we know in some cases what is the reason behind it. We know, for example, diabetes patients, even though they are well treated with insulin, they still have a fluctuation in blood sugar. And often that results in that they're getting a dysfunction of what we call the endothelial cells on the inside of the blood vessels. And these are really important in this dilation. So if they do not respond properly to the stimulation from the brain, then you don't get this increased blood flow. So you can say that it is because a lot of these patients, they have other diseases that is actually hindering the normal erection response. So what we do is actually turn up the amplifier when you get stimulated and make sure we get a strong enough response that it actually translates into a dilation, thereby increase blood flow to the penile tissue.
Okay. And you have two candidates for erectile dysfunction.
Yes. And
they are both involving dopamine, just different formulations, or?
No, they are very unique compounds. So so you can actually say that when we did the original studies in the animal models, we can see that the IP 2018 has good effect in the psychogenic models of ED, whereas 2015 do not. So there is a differentiation here between the two compounds. So they both have dopamine that we know is important for the erection, but where 2015 have very little serotonin, 2018 has more because we need to strengthen, you can say, the origin of the psychogenic ED. So that could be a depression, or which is too low levels of serotonin, for example.
Okay, we have seen your timetable. The candidate that you have come most far with is at phase 2B.
Yeah,
right. And when will that be? When do you expect results?
So we expect to complete the dosing this year, as we said all along in 22. And then as soon as we finish dosing, we will of course close all the protocols as is required, and then start looking into, with the data at that time. Whether we'll have the final report in 22, I'm not sure, but we'll have the top line data just around the turn of the year.
Have you been keeping your timetable so far?
Yeah, on the 2015, the phase 2B, we are keeping the timetable. We see good recruitment in. The patients that are included in this phase 2B study are not so affected by the COVID, even though we think that it's over. It's still a major factor also in England, where you can say that the phase 2A in IP 2018 has been more affected. Because here we're talking about patients that are also depressed, and they have actually seen worsening of their symptoms during the last 2 years of lockdown.
Okay, and as we know, the market for these kind of drugs is quite big. And if you're talking about 30 to 40% of patients that does not respond to existing drugs, how big market are we talking about? In money?
Yeah, in money, yes. Yeah. So, of course, we say that there's more than 300 million men suffering from ED. They do not all take medication. We have around 21, 22 million prescribers in US and in Europe, respectively. And then you can say if you take those numbers, 30 to 40%, and you start starting up, and then if you go in with the same pricing as Viagra when that launched on the market, you're looking at a plus $1 billion euros in revenues, and up to actually almost 2 billion euro in revenues on the organic ED by itself. Of course, relying on how big the market penetration will be. So just like the Viagra when that came out, there was in the beginning it was not a big market. They needed to establish the market, and when this product comes to the market, we also need to make sure that all the patients that maybe have stopped taking the PDE5 inhibitors now come back because there is an alternative, instead of just trying to use what doesn't work.
All right. So, how about patents?
So patent life on the IP 2015, we have a composition of matter patent until 31, and that's also where you talked about briefly about the drug product. Because actually what we do is now we are formulating it into the capsule that will be the capsule that goes to the market. And this actually gives new, fresh IP, so we're getting new, fresh composition of matter IP, because what we actually have developed is a unique way of formulating this, so we get the right PK/PD profile of the compound for the specific indication that we want to treat. So we expect that we will actually publish some of these applications when they have been submitted, but right now we keep all the strategy a little bit close because it's an important part of the future for the company.
Okay, so you are filing patent applications as we speak, but you don't have actual patents.
Oh, yeah, we have patents for the compound.
Okay.
And we also have filed other patents already. But,
okay.
But
But for the actual pill that you will produce.
No, so you can say for the actual pills, the formulation, this is what we are doing now. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. There's a question from a viewer. Have studies with your candidates begun regarding the addiction space?
Yeah, so
you understand that?
Yeah, I think I understand. This is relating to the NIDA collaboration we have. So the way NIDA works is the National Institute of Drug Abuse in the US, big governmental institute. We have an agreement with them that they'll test our compounds. So they are in a queue, and that queue is moving along. However, if somebody comes with a drug that is further advanced in the clinic, they get priority over ours. But we expect to get results from that in the coming quarter, so we actually can come out and explain what we have seen in this study from the NIDA. So we're actually really excited about this as well.
Okay. And once you have positive data from the phase 2B, you will approach a big pharma company, or?
Yeah, we will continue the interaction because we already started based on the phase 2A proof of concept we generated for 2015. We actually went out to a lot of the pharma partners that we had discussed with before and shown them the data and also discussed how should the phase 2B trial look. And you can say, so based on what we wanted to do in the phase 2B and also what the market kind of requires, we actually generate this package. That's what we're working on now. So then we will actually, keep the contact, the dialogue that we have, and going out and finding the right partner that we can develop this and making sure we actually get to the market with this compound and provide relief to patients worldwide.
But you will get to the market through license agreements.
So we
not by yourself.
No, we will not go out. We need to find a partner for doing that.
Yes.
And how the deal that is going to look, we'll see when time comes. Yeah.
Okay. I wish you very good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.